Learning outcomes of this module will be to understand the drowning, that is the last of the various types of asphyxial deaths which have been covered earlier. Basically, you will be able to know about the definition and mechanism of drowning, to learn various types of drowning, to learn about the postmortem findings in cases of drowning, and to learn about the various medico-legal aspects of drowning. Drowning is a form of violent asphyxial death caused by the aspiration of fluid into the air passages caused by the complete or partial submersion in the water or other fluids. Thus, death occurs either due to entry of fluid in the respiratory passages or due to the effect of severe water and electrolyte imbalance. Let us understand the mechanism of drowning, how it is produced, because this will be very helpful in understanding what happens to a person who falls into the water. When the person falls into the water, initially he sinks into a depth corresponding to the momentum of his fall. However, we know due to the inherent buoyancy along with the additional struggling movements and the air trapped in his clothes, the body tends to make the person float rather than sink, and in this process the person rises towards the surface, and in his discreet desperate attempt to inhale air, the person in turn gulps down the large volume of water which are partly inhaled and partly swallowed. The water then inadvertently enters into the respiratory passages, and this acts as a foreign irritant, and this excites the strong reflexes, and at the same time the large volume of air is being driven out of the lungs. So, as a result of this, the asphyxia occurs. This leads to the insensibility and the victim finally succumbs to death. The barotrauma to the middle ear causes hemorrhage, and thus it leads to the vestibular disturbances, and this makes the victim lose his sense of direction underwater. During his struggle for life underwater, the victim may grasp anything which comes to his reach, like weeds, straws, mud particles, and such particles are found grasped in the hand firmly in his hand as a manifestation of cadaveric spasm. As we very well know, the drowning man clutches the straw, डूबते को तिनके का सहारा. Now let us understand the types of drowning. Now let us understand the types of drowning: the wet drowning, the dry drowning, the secondary drowning, and the hydrocution. The wet drowning, which is the commonest type of drowning, where the water is completely inhaled into the lungs. This can be further of two types depending upon the water, the source, whether it is a fresh water or it is a sea water. The fresh water drowning, this causes hemodilution up to 70% within a couple of minutes, and because of this it causes the breakdown of the RBCs, the red blood corpuscles, and this in turn leads to the hyperkalemia and hyponatremia, that means rise in the potassium level and fall in the sodium level. In turn, there will be a circulatory overload, and this fresh water also denatures the surfactant, which causes decrease in the lung compliance. There is a fall in the systolic blood pressure, which leads to myocardial anoxia, ventricular fibrillation, and ultimately death. Usually the death occurs within 2 to 3 minutes in these cases of freshwater drowning. In seawater drowning, as we know, the seawater is a hypertonic medium, and this causes hemoconcentration of the blood in contrast to the hemodilution which is caused in the freshwater drowning. In this, due to hemoconcentration, as much as 40% of the water from circulation is withdrawn into the lungs and massive pulmonary edema is produced. There is increased sodium concentration, pulmonary edema and myocardial anoxia ultimately causes death. Here death occurs usually within 4 to 5 minutes. That means it takes longer than the freshwater drowning. This is the commonest type of drowning, the wet drowning. Then the dry drowning. The person may die in water due to drowning, but there are no typical signs of drowning. Then it is called as dry drowning. What happens here? Here the water enters the larynx, and due to immediate and severe laryngeal spasm, the water is prevented from entering into the lungs. So death is due to laryngeal spasm itself, and that's why we don't find any typical feature of drowning death in these cases of dry drowning when we conduct the autopsies. Third category is the secondary drowning, or also called as post-immersion syndrome. Here the death occurs due to the secondary effects of drowning. It is usually seen after a gap of few hours or maybe few days if the person has been resuscitated after being recovered from the water. Death may be either due to anoxia or irreversible brain damage, which is associated with electrolyte imbalance or metabolic acidosis. Death may be due to any associated head trauma or may be due to the bronchopneumonia. The last one is the hydrocution, also called as immersion syndrome. Here death occurs due to the cardiac arrest as a result of vagal inhibition due to cold water stimulation of the nerve endings on the body surface, the ear and nasal passages, as well as in the epigastrium. If a person suddenly jumps in cold water or takes bath in cold water, the sudden contact with the cold water may stimulate the vagus nerve, which causes hydrocution. Let us see what are the various causes of death in drowning. There are so many mechanisms which are simultaneously operating in the drowning. It can be asphyxia, it can be myocardial anoxia, it may be ventricular fibrillation, vagal inhibition, laryngeal spasm, or even exhaustion, or even the secondary injuries, for example head injuries, when the person dies due to head injury although the body is recovered from the water. We see the typical autopsy findings. What we see externally is the clothing, skin and hair are wet. The skin is pale, cold and clammy due to contraction of the superficial blood vessels with low body temperature resembling that of the temperature of the water. The postmortem lividity or postmortem staining is seen over the face, head and neck and front of chest, since the body floats in an upside down position and is usually bright pink in color due to the imbibition of oxygen through the water. So this is in contrast to the normal postmortem staining where we usually see on the back of the chest and abdomen. Here it is prominent on the head and face, and that too on the anterior aspect. But if the body floats in the water in upside position for a quite long duration, then the color usually becomes dusky and cyanotic. However, in the turbulent water where the body is in continuous movement, then postmortem lividity may not develop at all. The cutis anserina usually occur due to contraction of the erector pili muscles. They appear as a puckered appearance of the skin with hair standing on its end. In drowning, the rigor mortis sets in early and passes off early as well due to the exhaustion of the muscles. The conjunctiva may be congested with subconjunctival ecchymosis present. The hands show cadaveric spasm with grasping of the weed, straw, hay, whatever comes to in his hand. The washerwoman's hand and feet are typically seen if the body remains submerged in water for a period of say 48 to 72 hours. Where in washerwoman hand or washerwoman skin there occurs that the palms and soles, the skin of the palms and soles, this becomes bleached, wrinkled and saddened. The epidermis is separated from the dermis in a glove and stocking like pattern from hands and feet. Then typically in a case of drowning we observe the presence of froth, and that froth is very much characteristic. What is the characteristic feature of that froth? This is typically called as foam, and it is described as fine, white, copious, tenacious, lathery and persistent frothy foam in the shape of a balloon, seen oozing out from the mouth and nostrils, and comes again after being wiped off. So, if you wipe it off, it will again come out. This is formed by the water inhaled into the lungs, which causes irritation of the mucosa, leading to the secretion of the mucus. Water along with the desquamated epithelium and mucus, they all are churned up to form this froth by violent respiratory efforts. It may be blood tinged and thus gives a pinkish hue to that froth, and this froth is pathognomonic of the drowning or the characteristic feature of the drowning. When pressure is exerted upon the chest, then further this copious froth is exuded out. We may find froth in other conditions also other than the drowning. So, we have to keep in mind, if there is no typical history of the body recovered from a water, or there is a conflicting theories, we have to keep in mind that there are certain other conditions also where we may find the froth. What are those? Typically observed in the organophosphorus poisoning, the opium poisoning, the electrocution, the epilepsy, all these conditions. The putrefactive gases, they accumulate inside the body cavities, and this leads to the rise of the body to the surface. When we open the body, or at the time of autopsy, the inside of the body, what we see? The airways, they contain the stiff form or frothy fluid or a gritty gravel or mud from the dirty water, and that can be performed by simply a very simple slide test. What we do? The contents of the airways are smeared over a glass slide, and then another glass slide is drawn over it, and the presence of gritty sensation which we can feel through our fingers, it just looks like some gritty sensation, as you can understand, like sand, and this confirms the drowning. The lung shows large subpleural hemorrhages produced due to rupture of the intra-alveolar partitions beneath the pleura, and they are called as typically as Pultoff's hemorrhages. They are more prominent over the lower lobes and interlobar surfaces. The lungs, because of that massive water inside, are ballooned up, edematous, very heavy and boggy. They are doughy, feel like dove, they are doughy and spongy, and the margins of both lungs, they will completely opposed to each other. Thereby they cover the whole of the pericardium. On cut section, a crepitus like feeling is present due to the entrapment of water, what we call as emphysema aquosum. The condition develops only when the conscious victim of drowning struggles for survival. We can also see rib markings prominently over the boggy and voluminous lungs. In contrast, dry drowning, such changes will not be seen, and only the non-specific signs of asphyxia are present. So, there we usually make the diagnosis by excluding the other causes or other findings. In saltwater drowning, lungs are much more edematous than freshwater drowning, and they appear purple in color. The blood is more likely to remain in a fluid state due to prevention of coagulation resulting from release of the plasminogen activator from the damaged epithelium of pulmonary capillaries. The water may also be detected from the middle ear resulting from the violent respiratory excursions, and there may be associated hemorrhages in the middle ear as well. One of the most important tests which we do routinely if the body has been recovered from water is the diatom test. Most samples of the water, they contain microscopic unicellular algae or plankton, what we know are called as diatoms. These diatoms, they have a silicaceous cell wall, cell membrane, and they vary from size 10 to 80 microns. As a result of these hard shells, microorganisms are heat and acid resistant. So, in wet drowning, these microorganisms get aspirated along with the inhaled water, and then they pass into the circulation through ruptured pulmonary capillaries and then alveolar walls, and then finally get distributed to the various organs of the body and even up to the bone marrow as well. They can be demonstrated on histological examination, and their presence in the victim's body and the same set of diatoms present in the water from where the body was recovered. This concludes the case to be a case of antemortem drowning, and it specifies the source of the water as well. A simple test is performed from bone marrow collected from sternum to demonstrate the diatoms. How we do? First, we take the marrow from the sternum, or mostly from the sternum or any long bone, and this is subjected to acid digestion, centrifuged, and then the sediment is examined under a microscope. A sample of bone marrow, a minimum 5 gram is needed. This can be taken, and then this is digested with nitric acid for around 1 to 2 hours. Then this fluid is centrifuged and the deposit is examined microscopically. Through acid digestion, all the organic matter will dissolve except the diatoms because of that silicaceous wall, silicaceous covering. A sample of the drowning medium is also subjected to microscopic examination. A few drops of the tincture iodine or the Lugol's iodine is added to the water sample, and then it is allowed to stand for 24 hours. Afterwards, it is centrifuged at the rate of 3000 rotations per minute. The supernatant fluid is discarded and the deposit is examined microscopically. If both the medium and the marrow contain the same type of diatom, then it is conclusive evidence of death due to drowning in that medium. Tissues like lungs, kidneys, brain, etc., they can also be subjected to this test. The most advantage of this test is that the diatoms resist putrefaction, so they can be recovered even after a longer time, even the body has been totally decomposed. However, we must keep in mind that a negative diatom test does not rule out the possibility of drowning. If it is positive, that's true, that it ensures that it's a case of drowning, but the negative does not rule out. Then the Gettler test. After diatom test, we can also perform the Gettler test to know whether it's a case of drowning or not. This is also known as chloride test. This is done by drawing 10 ml of blood from each ventricles of the heart, and then they are subjected to the estimation of chloride levels. The normal value of chlorides in each chamber is 600 mg/cent. In seawater drowning, there is usually an increase of 30 to 40% in the left ventricle, while in the freshwater drowning, these chlorides, they are reduced by almost 50%, and we can understand that this change will not be seen in cases of dry drowning. Coming on to the medico-legal importance, the first and foremost medico-legal implication is to establish whether it's an antemortem drowning or postmortem drowning. The points which favor antemortem drowning can be the presence of froth, which is copious, tenacious, lathery, exuding from mouth and nostrils and comes again after being wiped off. Cadaveric spasm of hands where materials like weed, sand, particles can be seen. Presence of Pultoff's hemorrhages over the surface of the lungs. The voluminous lungs and crepitus like feel on the cut section and prominent rib markings over the lungs. The presence of sand or mud particles in the larynx. Presence of water in the middle ear and in the stomach, as well as a positive diatom test. Accidental drowning is the commonest manner of death, followed by suicidal drowning. Accidental is more common in children, in elderly persons, the persons who cannot swim properly, whereas suicidal drowning is more common among the females. Homicidal drowning is rare, but if it occurs, it will be associated with other findings like associated injuries or the poisoning. Death occurring in shallow water should be considered as homicidal until unless proved otherwise. In homicidal drowning, the hands and feet of the victim may be tied with weights. Any associated injuries found should be evaluated properly, and if necessary, crime scene visit should also be done. A good swimmer can also tie hand and feet by himself to commit suicide by drowning. Drowning is a form of violent asphyxial death caused by aspiration of fluid into air passages, caused by complete or partial submersion in water or other fluids. Various causes of death in drowning include asphyxia, myocardial anoxia, ventricular fibrillation, vagal inhibition, laryngeal spasm, exhaustion and secondary injury. If the body floats in the water in upside down position for a quite long duration, then the color usually becomes dusky and cyanotic. Foam is the characteristic feature of antemortem drowning. The lungs show large subpleural hemorrhages produced due to rupture of the intra-alveolar partitions beneath the pleura, which are called as Pultoff's hemorrhages. A simple test is performed from bone marrow collected from sternum to demonstrate the diatoms, that is called diatom test. When the marrow is subjected to acid digestion, centrifuge, and then the sediment is examined under the microscope, whereas the other test can be the chloride test.